Hi, I'm Liz, and welcome to Believe in Yourself. I forgot to say my name last time, but you know what? It's a journey. We're all learning. Thank you for being with me on this one. So I mentioned last time that I was going to start with Bill Bryson's short history of nearly everything, and I sort of alluded to it that I was having some troubles, and it eventually got to a point where I had to quit. It was a really difficult decision. I don't like giving up on books. When I was going through a phase of really not reading, I started a bunch and then never finished them. So it's sort of like a hang up for me that like there are all these kind of unfinished books out there that I just didn't stick with long enough. When I got into reading again, there were a few books I started where I wasn't really feeling them. I just wasn't really enjoying myself, but I stuck through it. And then I got to the end, and the end like blew me away. I can't give up on a book because it might be like the best book ever. What I had to tell myself with Bill Bryson is that like the plot isn't gonna pick up. It's kind of just gonna be like this book only for another 450 pages. So I had to give up on it, kind of heartbroken about it. Maybe I'll return to it another time. Who knows? Life is long. But not in January of 2019. I will stick to The Mother Tongue, which is the Bill Bryson book that I read last year that I absolutely loved. Clearly, I just care more about linguistics than the earth sciences. What Lab Girl and Short History of Nearly Everything reminded me is that I don't care about anything biology or earth related unless it's the ocean. So I'll stick to that as well. So now on to the books I actually did read, because I did read some books. The first book I'm going to talk about I also brought up last time, which is Spoonbenders by Daryl Gregory. It was my book club pick for this year, so me and my friends read it, and I really liked it. It's about a family who have these various different powers, and it is about them kind of navigating at a certain point in their lives. They were doing it on stage, and then the matriarch, their mother, dies, and so the whole thing sort of plays out from there. The plot is difficult to talk about, I found, because so much happens and it gets really like a lot of different characters come into play, and there's all these sorts of puzzle pieces that are coming together. So it's hard to talk about without like really getting into it. I will talk about my favorite thing about this book, which was the powers that they discussed. So the three members of the family are Irene, Frankie, and Buddy. And then Maddie is Irene's son, and Teddy is her father. And Teddy doesn't have powers. He's just like an incredible sleight of hand magician. So he's sort of the one behind all of the spectacle of their powers. And then their mother was like one of the greatest and most powerful psychics the world has ever seen. She could like do it all. Frankie's powers are telekinetic. Irene's powers are that she cannot be lied to. She's the human lie detector. And Buddy can see the future. And these are all seem kind of like your standard kind of powers. But actually the book really adds a very interesting twist onto all of them. Frankie's telekinesis, he really has to like build a relationship with the object he's trying to move, which is very different than we typically see with telekinesis. And then Irene, her power, it's not so much mind reading, but she can't be lied to. So she can't tell what someone's thinking, but she can tell if what they say to her is a lie. And it really affects her relationships, like personally, romantically, and also like with her son and her father. There's such an interesting conversation she ends up having with a lot of these men that she dates, where like Maddie's father got really good at always answering around a lie, which is very sneaky, and obviously did not, even though it might seem like, oh, he like never lies to me, it did not work for them. She starts dating a man in the book who does lie to her, because that's what happens in relationships, there are little white lies. And she's so upset about it, and so then her journey is about accepting that like people might lie to you, and it's not necessarily malicious. It's not going to be the end of the world. It doesn't need to be the end of the relationship. It was just really interesting thinking about like what lying means, and the lies that we tell each other and the lies we tell other people to protect them or because we care about them. Just very interesting thoughts there. And then the most interesting power I thought for sure was Buddy's, because he can see the future. But it's complicated because he can't necessarily separate what he's seen as the future from what's already happened to him and what's happening to him now. So like when he talks about what he's seen, he still calls them memories because there isn't a separation for him of what is what, and he's very unstuck in time. He sometimes wakes up and doesn't know what year it is or what part of that year because he doesn't know what he's remembering and what he's already seen. So that was really interesting. I really loved that take on it. That those pieces plus the way that the plot all really came together. The whole time I was just like, please, please, please let all of these just fall right into place, and they absolutely did, and it was amazing. So I am going to start rating these books I'm reading. I would give Spoonbenders like a 3.5 to a 4. I think that it's a solid 3.5, and that if I'm feeling very like generous towards it, it's a 4, because it did really deliver on everything that I kind of like wanted it to, but writing wise, there wasn't anything like stuck out. You're sort of just, it's one of those books that you read and you don't ever like find yourself really taken with a phrase. At least I didn't. So yeah, it also took place in Chicago. So that was always like a little bit of like a nice little thing to remember when they're talking about Jewel Osco and stuff. I love reading books that take place in Chicago, and movies and plays, of course, obviously, but reading books where like the person is very clearly from Chicago and like knows the city, because it just feels like a little, it's always really nice. So yeah, Spoonbenders, Daryl Gregory, very fun. I enjoyed it. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. And I have read one Donna Tartt book before. I read The Secret History last year. Really loved it. That was also true of The Goldfinch, times like a billion. I absolutely loved this book so much. I have to imagine part of it is just because it was like 800 pages long. So when I finished, I was like, I have just gone on a very long and beautiful journey with these characters. It's about a boy named Theo. He lives in New York City. When he's 13, his mother dies in this very tragic terrorism attack on a museum. And he's in the museum with her, and he's separated from her when she dies. And he ends up in a room with this old man who dies in front of him, gives him a ring, tells him to go to a location, and also kind of pushes into his hands this painting of The Goldfinch by Fabricius. I don't know if that's how you say his name. I'm just exposing how ignorant I am about pronunciation on this show, apparently. But he takes the painting, he's 13, he's traumatized, he has no idea what he's doing. And so then the rest of the story unfolds. He has this painting and can't tell anyone. He meets this guy named Boris, and they sort of get into all of these horrifying misadventures for a 13-year-old. And then it ends up with him going back to New York, getting into this world of antiquing and art history, and the women that he falls in love with and the families that he meets. And it's so deep. It just goes so deep into these worlds that he is a part of. The language, this is Donna Tartt's superpower, I swear. The language is so unbelievably evocative. I feel like I'm there. I can like smell it. Like she just has an unbelievable mastery of language. It's just, it was amazing. I feel like I cannot gush enough about this book. Oh, I was like basically crying through like the entire thing. And unlike what I was saying with Spoonbenders, like there are absolutely moments during The Goldfinch where like I would read a line and I would have to stop and be like, oh my God. I liked it, as you can tell. I would definitely give it 5 stars. That's just like first 5-star of the year, for sure. The next book I'm going to talk about is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I can hear the screams already. I know everyone loves this book. So I'm trying to angle it so that like it isn't flashing in your faces. And this lovely library cover. I knew I was going to love this book. Like there was just not a question in my mind because everybody that I know loves it. And it was on a recommendations list from for people who enjoyed the library at Mount Char, which I read last year and am obsessed with. I knew I was going to like it, which is not always a good thing going into a book. Like I've had a lot of times where I've gone in and been like, this is going to be awesome. And then it just doesn't live up to expectations. But this book lives up to expectations. So for those of you who haven't read it, Station 11 is a post-apocalyptic book. It is about an illness that sweeps through the world and kills an unbelievable amount of people in a very short period of time. So there's kind of the classic like people looting and rioting and fighting over resources and going into hiding. But Station 11 does something very different and interesting, which is that it does not focus on necessarily people or even that time period of people freaking out about it. Parts of the book take place during the very, very beginning of the epidemic, and then it skips forward like 15 to 20 years. And of course, you're seeing effects of that really terrible time period. Like, you meet characters who've had to kill people. You meet like cult members who have risen up around the lack of control in the world, lack of government or whatever. But mostly it describes a lot of how things have really calmed down, and about how at a certain point in this time, it's not going to be about like just surviving. It's going to be about trying to build a new life and a new world. It really centers around this one group called the Traveling Symphony, and their motto is survival is insufficient. So this book delves into like art's place in a crumbling world, and the necessity of art and joy, and not just scraping by, which obviously something that like is not talked about a lot, but is absolutely so important and necessary to think about. The writing's also beautiful. It goes super fast too. I just absolutely zoomed through it, loved it. And there's a lot of Shakespeare in it as well, which is always fun for me. I'm a theater person. So reading about the Shakespeare was obviously so great. It's such an interesting thing to like take with us into kind of a new age. There's a character who's not at all tied to the Traveling Symphony. She's from a different kind of time and character group that we deal with earlier on. But her name is Miranda. And because we're already talking about Shakespeare so much, I immediately like thought of The Tempest and of all of the kind of things that were associated with The Tempest. And she's from an island, so like it all kind of ties together. And I thought it was such a clever way of giving me thoughts about her without having to like connect the dots in such an obvious way. So just little things like that I just thought were so clever, so much fun. There is still a darkness to it, obviously, like there is death and fear, but it's so much more about like hope and joy. And in today's horrifying world, that is definitely what I need. I don't want to read like a nihilistic, think piece about how we're all going to murder each other. Like, it may be true, but it's not the world I want to like exist in. Actually, both this and the Goldfinch deal with those kinds of concepts, in that like nihilism is so easy and so automatic in some instances, but it is not like fulfilling. I also gave this 5 stars. I think it's funny that I was very kind of like, I like them about like all of the books I talked about last time, and then this time I'm like, everything is so good. So yeah, Station 11. Check it out if you haven't already. I know I'm the last person on earth to read it, but maybe there's somebody out there who hasn't. The next book on my list was What Is Not Yours Is Not Yours by Helen Oyeyemi. I hope I said that even remotely properly. I read Helen Oyeyemi's book, Boy Snowbird, last year. It's a mild retelling of Snow White. Very interesting. Would highly recommend that also. And this, I was like, ooh, I'm not a short stories person. I never have been. I need to like be with a character for 700 pages. So sometimes short stories just go way too fast and I'm never able to like really connect with them. Not so for What Is Not Yours Is Not Yours. These stories are incredible. I'm like obsessed with them. Like I started them and I was just like, oh. These stories are very creepy and I was very into it. Like, I'll just read you some of the titles of the chapters, or of the stories themselves, I guess. So my favorite story was called Sorry Doesn't Sweeten Her Tea. One of them is Your Blood as Red as This? A Brief History of the Homely Wench Society. And the last one is If a Book is Locked, There's Probably a Good Reason for That, Don't You Think? So just very like fun and a little snarky. All about locks and keys. So that's sort of a tie-in of all of them together, which was really interesting. They're also, all of these stories, very casually gay. Like, just sort of like Yeah, and then there's a character and she's a woman and she also loves a woman. So refreshing. Obviously, I love to read books where like the whole point is being gay. Like I read both Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda and Leah on the Offbeat last year, and those are about like it's hard to come out and I have this like romance that I don't know what to do about and who can I tell, and oh, it's also like dramatic. I'm all for that. But it's also so nice to just read something where it's like, yeah, and I fell in love with him and I'm also a man. Shouldn't be as weird as it is, but when I started reading them, I was like so happy about it. They're just really smart and very unique. I don't know how else to say it. I just was really grabbed by them. I was just very like, yes. I could have read 20 more, and that is like not me. This was just so incredible, and I should have known because she's great. So if you don't like short stories, you might still like this, and if you do like short stories, you should definitely read this. I also gave it 5 stars. I also wonder if there's some feelings of like if you've already read a great book and then you get into another good book and you're like, this is all so great. I was just clearly having a lot of fun once I gave up Bill Bryson. The last book I'm going to talk about, I'm sure will also be familiar to some of you. It is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I know I'm also the last person on planet Earth to read this book. I'm aware. But I did it. I read it, my first Madeline Miller, and I obviously loved it. I mean, like, it's wonderful. There's no question. It is a retelling of the story of Achilles and Patroclus. I always thought it was Patrocles, and then I looked it up, and everybody says it's Patroclus. So that's what I'm going to say. And if you want to correct me, feel free, because I have no idea. I always said Patrocles when I was growing up. It's so sweet. I don't even know what else to say about it, except that it just like was the most lovely and wonderful, sad, beautiful thing I've ever read. I also didn't know this when I picked it up. I thought it was going to be from Achilles' point of view. I don't know why I thought that. But it's from Patroclus' point of view. It's about him growing up very like kind of like weak and puny, and how he's like bringing shame to his father and all of that. And he gets sent to live with Achilles and his father. They're both princes. There's a lot of countries in Greece. I didn't know that. Like literally everyone in the story is a prince or a king. My history with this sort of thing is that when I was younger, I was so into Greek mythology, and I got very into Odysseus. I don't know why. There must have been like a Wishbone or an illustrated classic or something. I knew that really well. I didn't know the Iliad well. The only thing I knew about the Iliad was that obviously Achilles with his like ankle or whatever, Achilles drags someone named Hector around with his wagon for a really long time, or his chariot, his wagon. It's very sad and gay. So that was obviously lovely. I'm so upset by it all the time. Oh, the only thing about it, and I feel like I have to say this because like it's the reason I just cannot give it 5 stars, which really hurts me in my heart because I want to give this book 5 stars, but I can't, because Madeline Miller does this thing throughout where she just constantly changes the tenses. Literally be times when Patroclus is like, I was doing this, and then the next paragraph will be like, I am doing this. And I'm like, which one? And not in like the first half is was and the second half is. Like it goes back and forth constantly. And I wondered if there was some like point to it, but I couldn't think of any. So if I'm stupid, please tell me why this is happening in this book, because then I'll just like bump it up 5 to 5 stars. But like, tenses is like one of those things that like really bugs me. I don't know. Am I dumb? Someone please tell me. Other than that, this book is so wonderful. I can't wait to read Circe, which is I know the other one that she wrote. More books like this, please. More retellings of mythology and things like that. Classics. Make them gay, please. Just to give you a preview of next time, the book I'm reading now is Where'd You Go, Bernadette? I'm liking it so far. It's very interesting. And then there's a movie coming out, which will be really fun. I don't have a book tip this week, except that, as you can see, I use mostly library books. So if you don't have a library card, you should get one. I know that everyone really loves to buy books, and like, I'm all for it, but also use the library. It's one of the most important resources that we have in this country. It's like not just for reading, obviously. Like my library does help with your taxes. They have fishing rods you can rent. They have homework help. The people meet there. They use the meetings to meet there. Like it's just a wonderful place, and it's free. So go get a library card. Please subscribe if you haven't already, like this video, and leave me a comment. I really want this to be a, back and forth process. I just want to talk to you. I want you to talk to me too. And until next time, believe in yourself.